Welcome to another TFE Live. This is our show number 271 for the 10th of March, 2020. I'm your host, Tom Ehman, and I want to check in with Julia. I trust you are well, ma'am.
I am.
No coronavirus yet?
Better.
Well, that's hopeful. You haven't been out of the apartment in, what?
A week.
A week?
Yeah.
Well,
It's getting small.
you got to walk around the block yesterday, though.
Yes, I did, and that was good. I should have another one today.
And that's the advice, is for people to stay in, especially if you're, a senior,
Elderly like me.
a senior citizen, like you and me both. What do you want to say at this point in the show?
I look forward to an announcement you have later.
Well, indeed, but do you want to like, share, and...
Oh, always like, share, and subscribe. We had a bunch of shares last time, and it really boosted the readership. And
Yeah,
that's
the
great.
viewership. That was a big show
Thanks.
on, what was that, on Friday. Today is Tuesday, and likewise, like, sharing, and subscribing always helps. We appreciate your support. Go over to sailingillustrated.com and become a patron via Patreon if you're so enthused, or if you're so inclined. We appreciate the support very much indeed. Let's get on with the show. Just a reminder that on Sunday here in the U.S., we went on daylight savings time, or summertime as you call it in most of the rest of the world. And for the next 3 weeks anyway, it's a little messed up here because you are not on summertime yet in Europe, and you're still on summertime down under. So there are the show times in your time zones. We're 1300 Pacific, as always, which stays 1600 Eastern. But for the rest of you, there's an hour adjustment until the end of this month when Europe goes on summertime, and the first weekend in April when New Zealand and Australia go off summertime.
Just check your computer.
Well, indeed. Check your computer, or check your... Well, you've got an Apple Watch, don't you?
I do.
Keeps all those time zones
It does.
for you. Okay. I want to thank our guest on Friday. The esteemed Jenny Tulloch was with us. And interesting insights into women's sailing and into the broadcasting world, into professional sailing as a woman, and as a hell of a good sailor, and somebody who's obviously very bright, having attended 3 of the great universities in the world. Stanford, Harvard, and I can't remember if it's, do you remember, Julia, was Cambridge or Oxford? But she just did her master's there.
I was looking forward to hearing London School of Economics, but that's not what it was.
I don't think it was. But it was great to have Jen on the show. We thank her for that. We also want to thank our statistician, Commodore Clark Chapin, I'll back that title off, who has sent us our latest stats. It looks like today, if we have a couple hundred views, and we normally have a couple thousand or more per show, we'll go over the 600,000 cumulative views for TFE Live since he started keeping track back in January of 19. So that's only for the last year and 15 months or so. Clark, thank you very much. Our Fozy, who is the past Commodore of Portage Yacht Club in Michigan. And,
it really is fun to see the line go straight up.
Yeah, it's not quite a hockey stick curve, but it's gratifying. And thanks to all of you for your support.
Indeed.
Speaking of whom, let's see who all is on here now, Julia. We got a lot of folks on here.
We do.
As usual, we'll say hi, and we're not going to say hi to everybody, but notable comments when we've got who here. We've got John Schaefer is just back from the Heineken Regatta, back to Annapolis. Jody Shields is on down under where it's early now. It's 0700, I think, in Sydney, or on the East Coast anyway. Welcome to What's Canceled Now, Illustrated. Yeah, Jody, we'll talk about a few of the things that are canceled, and more, perhaps notably, what is not canceled. Because a couple surprises still. Clark Chapin, too well and often washed up, thumbs up from Michigan. Thank you. Clark loved and shared. Yeah, even just right now clicking on the thumbs up. And by the way, we say again, those of you watching in replay, as Julie likes to remind all of us to go watch the comments, because those of you in replay can nonetheless comment.
Yes,
right?
indeed.
We are happy to have, and a lot of people do. Exactly. Karen Robertson in Scotland, Paul Homchick, Mark Husted, Christoph Julian. There's a new name, Christoph Julian. Welcome to you, sir. Bill Canfield and Andrew Carlton. Andrew Campbell, a New York Yacht Club American Magic team member and esteemed San Diegan.
Jeff Waller reminds us that Sailing World on Water is not canceled.
Good. We're happy to hear that, Jeff. Jeff Waller, of course, in Australia. Clark Chapin, Julia Vedekant, is that a sweater in Michigan colors? Do you follow Stanford? Do your fellow Stanford alumni know?
This is a yachting.
It's yachting attire?
Yachting attire.
Okay.
Everybody understands that.
Here, I can't see it. Okay, it's just kind of lifted up. I'm going to risk this and tilt your camera down, and I'll probably get a crutonic shot here for the rest. Oh, it is very yachty.
Yes.
Okay. Julia's styling here in the studio. Now I probably got your shot messed up for the rest of the. We have to do that with great precision.
Yes.
So yeah, it's really more. It is a bit maize and blue, Clark. But there's Cal Berkeley across the bay, which Julia would be now.
It's muted with a lovely beige.
Commodore Hart is on. Charlie Hart, who's coming on the show to talk about his amazing new project that is going to have implications here, not only on the Bay but in the U.S. and beyond. Charlie, we got to tee that date up. A lot of others here. I'm just skipping through. Andrew Pindar, please excuse you are interrupting the middle of my evening. And Andrew's normally in Europe, normally in the UK, on a regular and a great sponsor and supporter of our beloved sport. Andrew, appreciate you becoming on. Marcelo Gervini down in Brazil, Ted Ryman in Cape Town. Andrew Pindar reminding us that it was Cambridge to which Jenny Tulloch attended, or to where she attended, right. To which she attended. Stingray up in Seattle, my beloved mother is watching in Ann Arbor. Hi, Mom. Warmer days in Newport, Jay Hanfield is saying, Newport, Rhode Island. Stingray, hello from always cool Seattle, back from sunny South Africa. Yeah, you had a good trip down there, I hear. And Seattle, of course, is the hot spot for this crutonic coronavirus. And it looks like here in the Bay Area, we're now number 2. We'll talk about that in a sec. Mario Sampaio in Lisbon is here. Steve Gruber can say. A lot of folks. Karen Olson Campia is here as well. Speaking, why don't we move on? Not speaking of. Rob Fry in Auckland. Hi, Rob. We should get a check-in with your son, Rob, with Leonard Takahashi, both on Sail GP, because it's not clear if the Sail GP San Francisco event is going to happen. There's been no mention of it being called off, but also the Olympics, for which Leonard has one of our favorite young sailors, Anna Fosi, has been on the show once or twice, has qualified in the 49er class for Japan. Jay Hanfield, let's see, who else? My mother, we are taking precautions here at the old folks' home in Ann Arbor. She's 85 or 6. Well, how old is she? 34. So she's got to be 86. Yeah. There's no virus in Ann Arbor yet, but we will have when the U students, the U of M students will go on spring break and then come back, and that probably will cause some issues. Jay Hanfield, it's not the virus that scares me. It's the fact that most generic meds and surgical supplies are all from China. Well, yeah, I think the global supply chains are being rethought all around the world, aren't they, Julia?
Yes.
I got to tip your camera down a bit. There we go. I've got to get a little bit of that. A little bit of that maize and blue in there.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Dan Primrose. Andrew Pindar. Great that wonderful Newport is again announced as the next the ocean race, U.S. stopper. Yes, we're going to cover that. In fact, I've got a special guest coming on Friday to talk about just that, about Newport and TOR. Jody Shields heading over to New Zealand this weekend to cover the Winfoil Nationals. Great. Jody, let us know links, please, so that we can hear your dulcet tones and watch your commentary for that event. The Boston St. Patrick's Day a lot of stuff is canceled. They've canceled many, many things here in California, including Larry Ellison's tennis tournament down in Indian Wells, which is, along with the big 4 Grand Slams, is widely considered as one of, if not, in fact, maybe even the best. I wouldn't go beyond Wimbledon or even the U.S. Open or, I guess, Roland. I mean, those 4 other tournaments are terrific, but the players love Larry's tournament, which he owns, and he owns the tennis center, the tennis garden there in Indian Wells, but they've canceled it because, in fact, here's what's happening with these canceled events, as far as I'm aware. The event organizers, for insurance and financial reasons, really can't just cancel the event without risking loss of millions of dollars. They need the government to come in and declare an emergency and say, sorry, the gig is up, as far as holding this kind of an event, which is what happened on Sunday. A couple days ago, the what county is that? Riverside County, right, Julia?
Yes.
Riverside County down there in Southern California declared an emergency. They started discovering the spread of the COVID-19 virus. And as soon as that happened, Larry then canceled the tournament because he can then exercise force majeure, or as we say, act of God clauses in the contracts that no doubt exist. That is the clauses. So speaking of the coronavirus, here's our update. And I try to keep it in the context of yachting and yacht racing and the Olympics, but some other tips. Thanks to our many bright and well-read and thoughtful FOSI who for sending on links that they thought you, our readers and viewers, might enjoy. Here's the first shot that from a week plus ago, and of course some people thought that was Venice, and it's not. That is Milano. And, of course, right at the epicenter of northern Italy, where they are in the so-called red zone, and they've closed everything originally up there in the northern part of the country. And now, of course, the whole country got shut down or locked down, as you might say, over the weekend. 60 million people. This is Richard Chambers, who's a newsman. Just thought this was a succinct tweet. 60 million people, that's basically the population of Italy, put under lockdown. More than 9,000 cases reported. It was 231 cases 2 weeks ago. All sporting events in Italy are suspended until the 3rd of April. All schools, universities closed, as well as theaters, gyms, bars, funerals, and weddings are barred. So that, in a nutshell, is what's going on in Italy, where they have never really had control of the outbreak, and there's serious concern about the U.S. because there's no testing to speak of here, except like this cruise ship that came in under the Golden Gate Bridge yesterday and docked in across the bay from us at Oakland. Then those people are getting tested, and they're the people who were sick rushed to local hospitals, and others in quarantine, and yada, yada. It really is a mess. But Italy is now, as you know, locked down through at least the 3rd of April, at least. And there are articles and scenes, and there's a couple of, I posted one on my Facebook page from an Italian doctor in Bergamo talking about what their real problem is how the hospital beds in the ICUs and otherwise, the isolation wards, are just overwhelmed, and they can't handle the COVID-19 patients, let alone the normal flow of people. Where, at least in the U.S., we're starting to get the sense that the hospitals are setting up these, what do you call them, Julia, the surge tents, that we've heard from our friend Alfredo Partibile and a few others who work in the medical field here in the hospitals here. So they're trying to get ahead of it. But again, you can't really get a test yet here in the U.S. because the first set of test kits that the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, sent around were not correct. They were not functional, and now they're rushing around. Your alma mater has put together, Stanford University's put together their own test kit and a laboratory to deal with the results. And as influential as Julie is, she could probably get a test if we needed one. But the medical system is going to be overwhelmed, and I think people are now starting to face up to the fact that that's not a panic. We're not being panicky when we say stay home, wash your hands.
Be prudent.
Be prudent and wise. What else? Cough into your elbow. Don't hug and kiss. And if you get a temperature, and if you got a dry cough, call your doctor. Don't go there.
No. Because
you might infect everybody in the process, whether it's your Uber driver or whoever else drives you. Call your doctor and let them interview you over the phone and then tell you, depending upon your locale, what to do next. Yeah. It's a tough situation, obviously. Specifically on yacht racing events, this email this morning from the Daniel Smith, who is the comms manager at World Sailing. Hi, Tom. The event I asked about, this Genoa World Cup Series. The event is scheduled to be held from the 11th through the 19th of April. We are working. Daniel's a great guy, and I think he does a terrific job. I have tremendous respect for him, but this is a lot of bureaucratic gobbledygook. We are working with the Federazione Italiana Vela, that's the national authority, of course, FIV, and we are receiving regular updates from them and the Italian government's recommendations. We're continuously monitoring the situation in Italy, and the health and safety of our athletes and officials will always remain our priority. Our medical commission had been producing briefing documentation, which I've seen, by the way, and which appears to be very reasonable and very good. Our medical commission producing briefing documentation, and they've updated it once, I know, and they're at least once, and are in regular dialogue with the WHO and the IOC's Medical and Scientific Commission. The briefing documentation has been supplied to sailors, event organizers, team leaders, race officials, and other key stakeholders within World Sailing. I wonder why it has not been put on their website, and maybe it has. We remain in contact with the FIV, and any announcement on the hosting of the event will be communicated by World Sailing. Statement of the obvious, but of course. And thank you, Daniel Smith, for that. But it seems impossible to most of us who are keen observers, whether it's Jean-Pierre Keekins up in Montreal, who runs that good website and Facebook page for youth sailors, young sailors, or Richard Gladwell down in New Zealand and everywhere in between, that it just seems impossible they're going to run this regatta. But if they call it off, they're going to lose a lot of money. They got sponsors. The money's probably already counted and banked, and they're going to have to give it back. And there's just tons of money that it's a sunk cost that's already gone into this regatta. And then they don't know how they're going to qualify people if this is one of the 2 remaining Olympic qualification events. So it's a tough situation for World Sailing, and of course World Sailing being in the dire financial condition there because of the croutonic and chaotic president. I'm not going to go into a thing about that today. Life is too short. So I don't want to say any more than that. But the Olympics, of course, is the other big issue. That takes place 24 July to 9 August, and increasingly you're seeing articles coming out saying, well, we do have in the contract the ability to, Julia, I'll tell you what, I got a call coming in that could be interesting. Why don't you carry on with some comments while I talk on the phone?
Mona Toth says hi from Hungary, and then later she says sailing events return entry fees. I'm on live. And okay, I'm on the air live. And in Italy, unfortunately, sailing clubs are also closed. Yeah.
They have all been canceled? Okay, thanks for that. Ciao. Bye. Carry on. Okay, I got my phone call over.
Margarita Marshall's watching.
Okay, that is breaking news. Speaking of the Olympics, I've just heard that was actually Gerardo Seeliger, who is running for president, coincidentally, that we just mentioned the befuddled and beleaguered current president, Kim Anderson. Gerardo Seeliger, who announced on this show some months ago that he is going to run for president. He is running for president. He just said that he has heard reliably that 3 big Olympic classes regattas, Hyères, Genoa, and he mentioned one other now, and I think he said Palma de Mallorca, all 3 have been canceled. For sure, I heard him say Genoa and Hyères, and maybe somebody else has got advice for us here in the comment section, Julia, as we go forward here. So that does, we're talking about Genoa. It sounds like that regatta is now canceled, according to Gerardo Seeliger, and no surprise. Okay, let's carry on here for a sec. Speaking also of the Olympics, they have canned the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Media Summit, which they have at this time each quadrennium just before a few months before the Olympics takes place. And this is so they can start to tell the stories of the athletes who are heading to Tokyo. And I think this was canceled not because they think the Olympics are going to be canceled, although obviously the handwriting is on the wall that they might be postponed, because it's now we're hearing from Tokyo that there is a proviso in the contract that they can delay it through the end of the calendar year. That is the host of the organizing committee for force majeure or whatever. But the fact that the USOC or USONPC, Paralympic Committee as they're now called, have postpones the media summit is an indication that I'm sure they don't want to bring people together and get people possibly infected. But more importantly, they probably see that there is some serious doubt about the Olympics being held in Tokyo. As far as the America's Cup is concerned, again, we're asking the question about Cagliari and Portsmouth. As you know, we played this video I'll play it again, on Friday. It's only 6 seconds long, and it's a barge taking the ETNZ, Emirates Team New Zealand boat, from ostensibly, they don't show you the ship that it's coming from or the location that it's going to, but the speculation is that the boat has not left on a ship to Sardinia, that it is on the hard stand in storage in Singapore. Now, the team denies that. The team is saying, no, it's on a ship headed to Sardinia, but I have my doubts. And Richard Gladwell, I think, also has his doubts. And we'll see. Richard's been writing both in the New Zealand Herald and also on sail-world.com. In fact, I didn't put the headline in here, but Richard wrote a rather, for him, he's usually calm and tame. He's right, Julia?
Yes.
He's not quite as, sometimes he doesn't point fingers quite the way we do sometimes here, but he did in this article saying the Italian government has, I can't remember the exact words, has screwed up. The incapable, incompetent Italian government has put the AC World Series Regatta in Sardinia at risk. So we'll see what happens. I don't know where ETNZ's boat is, but I rather suspect it's still in Singapore and it's going to get turned around and sent back to New Zealand. But I don't know that. It's not a one here, so I'm not telling you that's for sure happening. But Julia's, what do you think?
Well, there are a lot of extraneous, additional comments. Like Jay Henfield said, even if they don't cancel certain events, the canceled airline flights will make it impossible to get to an event if you wanted to go into a flying petri dish.
Flying petri dish.
And Alex Hent says, I'd encourage people not to cancel events and instead to have people sign liability waivers, then screen all participants as spectators. This medicine of canceling and freezing everything is worse for the world and then the illness.
Well, let's discuss that, Alex, because come on. First of all, the waiver is not worth the paper it's written on. Secondly, if you're going to get people sick, that's no reason to have a regatta if you think people are going to get sick, but they want to waive it and they want to go sail anyway. Third, take a youth regatta where maybe the kids will not get sick and they're really, or they won't get badly. Apparently the kids, there's some that have gotten it and have apparently even died. But generally speaking, apparently young people are not affected. In fact, may even be infected and not even know it. But here's the problem. They go to the Opti Regatta at Lake Garda. If that's not going to happen. That regatta will get canceled. But they go to some Opti Regatta someplace, and their parents and coaches and media and sponsors and volunteers, and the kids get infected, don't know it. Especially here in the States where the testing is so lame. It's not like in South Korea where they do drive-through testing. Have you seen those videos?
Yep.
Where they're in their cars and they drive up, and it's like you're going to the car wash, only it's the COVID-19 testing service. But the kids come back, and if they are infected, and then they're being hugged by their parents and their grandparents, excuse me, Alex, that's not a good look. So what do you think, Julia?
I'm not thinking, I'm reading.
Okay.
But Margarita Marshall says, I'd like to know why RC Today wrote that insensible and insulting article about Italy, the CV and the Cagliari event, and I don't know what that is.
Is it RC or RG?
She said RC.
I think she meant Richard Gladwell. A lot of people were pretty upset at Richard for writing, and I can't remember. Somebody will put it on here in the comments. I didn't have time to grab the article and stick it in the show, but I'm more frankly, the virus thing you can get lots of good medical information on. The sailing thing will sort out. People are smart. They'll they'll be level-headed. I rather suspect the AC World Series and regatta surely that regatta is going to get called off in Cagliari. But in defense of Mr. Bertelli, he really, as with Larry in the tennis tournament, he really can't call it off without taking a financial bath more than he's already going to, until the government extends the ban beyond April 3rd and says, okay, the rest of April also, everything's off. Now he can call his sponsors and the city, Cagliari, and say, excuse me, force majeure, act of God, I can't run this thing now. We can't run this regatta without a problem. Question is whether the UK regatta is going to be run. That is in Portsmouth in early June, because that's not being run by the Challenge of Record function, Challenge of Record COR 36. It's being run by the Defender. The Defender sponsor is Emirates. Emirates wants to have this big play, or did want to have this big play in Portsmouth. And Grant Dalton and his team, I don't mean the sailing team necessarily, but they are scheduled to put that regatta in Portsmouth. And there's some thought that the boats might, including Mr. Dalton's ETNZ boat, might actually be shipped through, assuming the Sardinia regatta gets called up, shipped through to Portsmouth, and you have a regatta there. First of all, it's later. Secondly, they don't seem to have the same problem in the UK that they do in Italy. Third, maybe there's a therapeutic, or there's not going to be a vaccine, it sounds like, but we'll see. Anyway, I think both those regattas are going to get called off. I think you're going to see teams get advice from their foreign offices, their state departments saying, excuse me, you think you're going to Italy? If you do, there's no guarantee you're going to get back into your home country. There's no guarantee you're going to get, you're going to have any insurance if you go to that regatta. So I think it's pretty dicey. And I think we all have to, start to, as apparently World Sailing has done, live up, face up to the fact, rather, that these regattas are going to get canceled, just like we've heard about these Olympic classes regattas. I mean, you've seen pictures like this, and I don't want to dwell on these, but this is a shot from a FOSI of what is normally I don't even know what airport. Does anyone recognize the airport? I think it's in the U.S., but I'm not sure. But obviously a customs inbound, an immigration part in an airport. But here is a video. I just before I go, I'm going to play it's a long video, 20 minutes, and I'm not going to play the whole thing. But this, speaking of smart friends of Sailing Illustrated, concerned people, thoughtful people, several of you have sent links to this guy, Dr. Campbell. What's his name?
Well, good morning, everyone. Yeah, you are most welcome.
Dr. John Campbell. Okay, I'll back it up and restart it. Who is a doctor, a retired doctor, and a professor of nursing. So he's been training nurses for, I guess, quite some time. And he's been putting up on YouTube daily now, almost every day. And this is his video from today, just to give you a flavor for it. As I say, I'm not going to play the whole thing. But he's thoughtful, measured, sounds sane. He doesn't seem to have a political agenda like everyone here in the U.S. Either you're trying to ruin Trump or you're trying to defend Trump and the federal government. This guy he seems just to be level-headed. And I commend his YouTube page. It's very easy to find Dr. Campbell YouTube. And those of you who, I posted it on my Facebook page earlier, those of you who saw it, did you see it, Julia?
I did.
Thought it was really a simple, good piece, to wit. Here.
Well, good morning, everyone. You are most welcome. Now, before we look at some of the dramatic developments that have happened around the world today, I just want to look at some research from China, because this sort of informs the pattern of spread that we're seeing. And this was published in Practical Preventative Medicine, written by Chinese epidemiologists and translated from the Chinese. And it relates to a study on a bus. Now, a bus passenger infected a fellow traveller sitting 4.5 metres away. So they looked at the CCTV footage of this bus. They worked out that this person couldn't have got infected any other way, but he got infected from someone who was sitting 4.5 metres behind him. This shows how this virus is transmitted in closed environments, in a closed-in bus, in cold weather. So closed environments, crowded environments, like buses, are going to spread this infection. So that gives evidence for that. And this is about twice the distance we've normally recommended as being a safe distance. So in closed environments, proximity becomes less of an issue. We're talking about 4 metres or more here. Closed environments with air conditioning, the transmission distance of the new coronavirus will exceed the commonly recognised safe distance. Now, they also showed that another passenger who got on the bus 30 minutes later was infected by a passenger who'd got off 30 minutes before who was infected. And again, the Chinese epidemiologists did a lot of work on this. They're able to eliminate other causes of infections. and they concluded that the virus had been in the air in the bus for 30 minutes. And they concluded it was in the air in the bus, not from a surface, because the passengers were on different parts. They travelled in different parts of the bus. And the same study also studied how this virus, the COVID-19 virus, can survive on surfaces. And it can last on surfaces at 37 degrees centigrade, 98 Fahrenheit, for 2 to 3 days on glass, fabric, metal, plastic or paper. So even when it's warm, it can survive for several days. So this does explain why we've seen spread in Singapore, Hong Kong, and warmer parts of China and southern parts of the United States. So at lower temperatures, the assumption would be, although that's not published in this particular research paper, is that at colder temperatures it could survive for considerably longer than that. And the other thing that people still really aren't taking full cognizance of, in my view, is that the virus can survive for 5 days in human feces or bodily fluids. This clearly puts people working in drains and sewage facilities at a level of risk. And it also shows the massive importance of meticulous toilet-related hygiene. So when we look at this new data coming out of China now...
Okay, Mike's back up, Julie. That gives you an idea of this guy's website, who, as I said, seems measured, thoughtful. He has the latest info. I mean, I had heard 6 feet, but now he's talking about, 3 times that in a closed environment, and he seems, he's not trying to create panic or create a particular case here. He goes on now to indict the U.S.'s lack of testing and asserts that our cases are way higher than 754, which I think basically everybody now accepts. But the U.S. probably has the capability of getting it, if anybody does, under control quickly once they get their testing situation going. But I commend his site to you. It's Dr. John Campbell, who's a Brit, obviously, on his YouTube channel, and you can simply Google that. Go have a look. Okay, this is a picture. You know what airport that is?
No.
That is from John Emmett this morning, which is tonight, passing through one of the lounges in Hong Kong. He is en route from the UK back down to Melbourne for the Laser Masters. And he said, like most airports, like Chris Wells showed us the picture on Friday afternoon, one of the busiest times of the year, busiest times of the week, rather, at SNA at John Wayne Airport down in Orange County. But here's Hong Kong today from John Emmett. He said there was nobody there. That's just unbelievable.
Incredible.
Yeah. And of course, I'm sure a lot of you have been through that airport, the new one and the old one. You've been through the old one? I'm sure you've been through the old one. You've been through the new one?
No.
Oh, man. It's the biggest, I think it's the biggest enclosed space on the planet. Or it was for a while. And of course,
it has landscaping inside, I know.
Well, so does the Singapore airport and some of the others.
But...
So that from Fozy John Emmett. And now, speaking of Fozy, before we went to air today, because he's got a doctor's appointment and couldn't make it live, I recorded a session with our longtime friend Tom Webster I said Hilton Head, North Carolina. It's obviously Hilton Head, South Carolina, in zipping around to get him on and done before he had to leave for his appointment. I apologize for the lower third that says Hilton Head, NC. But this is Tom Webster, an advisor, stockbroker, financial guy extraordinaire, lifelong yachtsman, dean of sailing in the southeast here of this country, longtime friend of Ted Turner's and so on. Have a listen to my interview with Tom Webster earlier. At the other end of my Skype line is a longtime friend, Tom Webster, who's standing by via Skype in Hilton Head, North Carolina. Tomas, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Thomas.
Well, it's been quite a week or so in the markets, and we can all talk about coronavirus and doctors and online advice, but I thought we should turn to financial advice from one of the smartest people I know, former vice president, senior advisor of Merrill Lynch, longtime, if not lifelong sailor, the dean of yachting in the Southeast, who saved and I mean literally saved the 1996 Olympics, which were, of course, in Savannah, the main Olympics, sailing Olympics in Savannah, just down the coast from where he is and where he lives in Hilton Head, North Carolina, that fabulous resort island which he helped develop some decades ago. Tom, what's your take on the markets, and what is this going to do to the sport of sailing?
Well, I think the best thing I can do, rather than giving advice, I'll just sort of give people something to think about. And the first thing I would think about is that every time you turn on TV or talk to your broker, they tell you you must stay invested. Well, if you got invested in 1929, you did not break even until 1954.
Is that right?
In 1968, you did not break even until 1980. If you were in the NASDAQ in 2000, you did not break in until 2017. A lot of people like Tom, myself, don't have 15 to 25 years left to wait for a market to come back. So that's the history lesson.
And what is your advice to somebody then who's in the market now? Where is it headed? And well, let's talk about how smart you were at the end of last year before the current meltdown.
Well, basically, I made the decision that if the Federal Reserve tried to save the market, it would be better for gold and gold stocks than it would be for the market. So I sold out all of my regular stocks and bought gold stocks, and that ended up to be about twice as good as the market was.
Well, and gold is, since you bought gold at the end of the last year, 2019, gold's up what, 50%?
Correct.
It retreated a bit today, but what would your advice be? Let's take Julia Vedekant, my co-host and coordinating producer, who's got a pretty good, healthy portfolio. Would you just say, tell her to park and sit, or would you give her other advice on what you think is going to happen going forward?
I think the first thing everybody needs to ask themselves is, if I lose this money, how can I replace it? So if you're not working, that becomes quite a challenge. The market really doesn't care what your personal tax problem is. So from everybody who 3 days ago had the oil stocks who said, I don't want to sell Exxon, I don't want to sell Oxy, I don't want to sell Chevron because I don't want to pay the taxes on it. The taxes were cheap yesterday. So I think you have to look is, can I replace the money if I lose it? And if I cannot, I probably shouldn't have it at risk.
What about the bigger picture from, say, 30 or 40,000 feet? What are the central banks doing, and how is that going to affect the economy, big picture, long term?
The big question right now is, since 1987, with the market crash there, where what we call the PPT, or the Plunge Protection Team, came in and asked all the banks to support the market the next day, or the long-term capital with Greenspan. The basic theory has been that if you buy every dip and never sell, the central banks will bail you out. Well, we may have reached the apex where the central banks can no longer bail anybody out. And we saw a little bit of that last week when the U.S. central bank cuts rate a half a point and the market still went down $1,400. So maybe the fact that the Federal Reserve's personal balance sheet, not the government balance sheet, but the Fed's personal balance sheet right now is close to $4.8 trillion. About 4 or 5 years ago, what we call the repo market, which is what backs up money market funds and all that, everybody got out of that business except for the Fed. Now the Fed is having to support the entire repo market. And today they came with 110 billion, and the requirements were 210 billion. So they can't seem to get enough because there's no liquidity, because it's all been sucked out of the market by the Fed, and now they're having to try to replace it. And maybe this is going to be the problem where all the central banks in the world get together and it just doesn't save the market this time.
So it doesn't sound like you think this is a short-term
virus.
Go ahead.
I think it's whether it's coronavirus or no coronavirus, The risk is buying the dip and having the Fed not be able to bail the market out. That's the big risk.
And that's the big risk for buying into the market. Now you're saying you think this is a longer term softening, not just the next few weeks or months.
We can have a bounce at any time, but so far every bounce has failed. If you look at today, last night the futures were down 450. They opened up today 1,000, and it's given it all back.
Yeah, so we're actually taping this ahead of today's show by a couple hours, and the market was up almost 900 points, and now it's lost almost all that's back down to it's just up 100.
Correct.
Okay, Tommy, let's talk about the sport. You're a longtime sailor. You raced fins and FDs, and with Ted Turner on American Eagle, with us on the It's Okay down at Balboa Yacht Club with Andy Rose and the gang. Lifelong sailor, racing sailor, senior series yachtsman. You follow the America's Cup. You have been a VIP coordinator at a number of Olympics. You've been an advisor to several world sailing presidents and one U.S. sailing executive director, namely me, over the long haul. And I don't mean financially, I mean on the sport. Tom, what do you see the implications, the market implications, the financial implications for the sport specifically? Let's start with the America's Cup. How about Prada?
Well, I think what you're going to see here is that if these travel restrictions keep being put on, events are going to be canceled all over the world. Does that mean sponsors come out of the events, or are sponsors locked in anyway? I don't know how everybody has their contract set up, but I think you're going to see that the transportation lines seem to be what the governments are afraid of as spreading the virus. So the transportation lines are slowly being shut down, whether it be trains, planes, cruise ships, hotels. The whole hospitality and transportation industry is really in quite a shambles, and it's going to have a major effect on any type of sporting event. Most of the sporting events right now, like in Italy and other places in Europe, are being done without spectators, which with the sport of sailing, maybe you can do that because we don't have a lot of spectators anyway. But you'll have a couple of key things coming up with Augusta National and the Masters. What do they do? What does the other PGA Tour do? We've already seen Larry Ellison cancel what is really the 5th largest tennis tournament in the world at Indian Wells. And my opinion is that you're going to see a lot of sailing events canceled because people just do not want to take a chance and get on an airplane.
Yeah, and of course you travel, and then even if you're young and healthy, you get it, and apparently you are contagious. You can spread the disease, the virus, even without showing any symptoms. We've all heard that, but we'll leave that to the doctors in the other segment. But I want to just do a lightning round with you, and I want to name an America's Cup sponsor and tell me how this financial environment is going to affect them, starting with Prada.
Right now, the main person who is being hurt with the Chinese economy is the luxury goods segment. Most of the luxury goods segment depend on the Chinese for 40% of their revenues and profits.
40%?
It's kind of basically shut down. I would imagine most luxury good suppliers are having a very tough go up. Wall Street is very smart. Let me give you a quick example. About 5 years ago, someone bought the Ryman Auditorium, which is the home of country music. They turned it into a real estate investment trust. Last week, the stock went from 97 to 65 because people on Wall Street thought, may not be any more concerts.
No, it's still a real estate company, not a concert hall.
Yeah.
How about, but so you think Prada's going to get hit hard because a big percentage of their sales are in China?
Correct.
Okay. How about Emirates Airlines?
They're going to have the same problem. They'll be probably flying 20% capacity at most.
Wow.
And also a lot of their flights come out of Asia, which no one is going to.
Yeah, we've seen empty planes. I put on my Facebook page a shot from inside the Delta, several Delta flights going to Europe in the last few days, and they're virtually empty. Just, it's amazing. And I heard from John Emmett this morning, who was passing through Hong Kong from the UK on his way to. He's a senior sailing coach and a good competitor himself, heading to the Laser Masters in Melbourne. And he said you could literally shoot a cannon through Hong Kong airport. And he sent me a couple pictures, which I'll put into the main part of the show. So Emirates, you think, is going to be hurt. How about Ineos, the big energy company of?
Well, I mean, with the price of oil coming down, I mean, every fracker in the U.S. right now is probably $10 underwater on the price of oil.
Mm.
Basically, a fracker thinks they need $35 to $45 on oil to make money.
A barrel.
So per barrel, yes. So with oil down to $30 a barrel, I don't know where it's trading today, but I would imagine all the energy companies are getting highly suspect. They all have lots of debt for expiration. The banks are probably quite worried about them. Today we had Oxy, and again, Oxy was at 100, then it was at 60. Today they cut the dividend by 75%, and the stock's trading at 12.
Hmm.
And the dividend went from 6.5% to 3.5%.
How about Airbus, which is a sponsor of New York Yacht Club American Magic?
No one is going to be buying airplanes when they don't have the ones that are used full.
Hmm. Okay.
About the only thing that may save the world from this virus is the fact that you can get on an airplane by yourself, literally, today.
Okay, well, let's turn it around. Is there any good news in sponsors? The auto, you got Toyota sponsoring as well. Let's talk about Amway, which, of course, one of the principal backers of New York Syndicate is Doug DeVos. How about Toyota and the other car companies, and an Amway?
Car sales in China alone are down 80% for this year. Amway, I don't know much about their products as far as how they go globally, but petroleum-based, most of their stuff is petroleum-based, so that's probably a good profit margin for them. And, I think we all just need to realize that hoarding is not the answer. Protecting oneself is the answer.
Mm. Yeah,
and that is avoiding crowds.
I hear and I read that Amway, which is their big growth, has been in Asia of late, but with people worried about going to the stores, that buying stuff through a network like Amway or other similar might become very strong, and they might actually do quite well, especially, as you say, since the raw materials, although they probably have a year's supply or more of whatever they take to make their various.
As on Wall Street is a guy named Dan Niles, and he said that all he's doing now is investing in companies where people stay home.
Stay home.
So whether it's videos or Amway or anything where people stay home, and what they do when they're home is what he's investing in, because he said a lot of people are going to be staying home.
Well, that's Tommy Webster, our longtime friend, senior serious, really the dean of yachting in the Southeast, or at least he was, if not still, southeast of our country, Hilton Head, South Carolina, that resort island. Actually, he and his brother and others developed that island some decades ago. I appreciate Tommy. We recorded that segment earlier today because he had an appointment right now. But, Julia, one thing that occurred to me is that this is pretty tough on all the America's Cup sponsors, except maybe Amway, New York Yacht Club's sponsor. And at least they're not a sponsor per se, but Doug DeVos, who's one of the principal billionaires who's given money to the team. And what Tommy is saying, look at us. You haven't left the apartment in a week, just out of proper care and precaution.
Abundance
of caution. And I've gone out and bought your groceries and picked up your medications at the local pharmacy, which I'm happy to do, of course. And I'm not, I basically hunkered down as well, because I can try my commutes 5 meters from the other part of the apartment here at the Beach Street Yacht Club to the studio. But a lot of people, it sounds like, are hunkering down, and it's what you hear, and that's what is going to happen, apparently. And I wanted you to get that flavor from Tom Webster, because I don't think this is as much a coronavirus, as far as the sport is concerned, and all of us, as it is an economic issue.
My sympathy lies with every little business.
Exactly.
That the storefronts are empty, and and restaurants are empty, and those guys can't take just a week or 4 of no income.
That's right. And then, of course, they start laying people off, and now suddenly there's less money. So everybody knows it's not a good look. It's going to be a tough thing, and it's going to be, as I say, I think it's less a coronavirus problem for our sport and more of an economic problem, a financial problem with sponsors. I mean, you just look at the sectors that are sponsoring the teams involved in the America's Cup, and it looks rough. This is from Wikipedia, and I'm going to take that back off. I didn't know this, but I thought Q meant you were quarantined. Well, it doesn't. It used to mean that. Code flag Q, or Quebec, called the yellow jack by some, is a simple yellow flag that was historically used to signal quarantine, but in modern use indicates the opposite, as a signal of a ship free of disease.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that requests boarding and inspection. So if you see a ship coming into port with a Q, it doesn't mean they're under quarantine, or that the Queen of England is aboard, or that they're from Montreal. They're requesting inspection. They think they're free of disease. Whereas Lima, which, of course, in yacht racing means come within hail, we want, come, the race committee puts that up, come by, we got some oral instructions or otherwise, change in the sailing instructions. Lima, also called the yellow jack, when flown in harbor, now means the ship is under quarantine.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Did you know that?
No.
I didn't either. And that source is Wikipedia, so I hope they're right. I don't have 100% confidence in Wikipedia, as probably a lot of you do not, but seem to be pretty good and getting better. Okay, Leo and Ibuki are in Japan for meetings, Rob Fry says. It's Leonard Takahashi and his crew, and coming back tomorrow, then heading to Palma for the Princess Trofeo Regatta. So far, he is saying not cancel. Well, as one hears, Gerardo Sealer called me, who is, he lives in Madrid, and he's extremely well connected. And I've actually gotten now another text from another source who is normally 100% reliable, who is also a coach of several teams that are going to these regattas. And he says the regattas that that Gerardo told me about, and I mentioned a minute ago, that is Genoa, these 3 Olympic classes regatta, Hyères in France, and the Princess Sophia in Palma, are all being called off. Now, don't go out and cancel your tickets because Ehman said that. You obviously have got to wait for the official advice from the regattas, but no surprise if they are. Mona Toth is on from Hungary. Margarita Marshall, still love to have your husband on, Margarita. Jay Hanfield, Julia is saying they're postponing events, and then they don't give refunds. They don't have to give refunds if it's a postponement, as opposed to a cancellation. Yeah. Jay says he's out $5,800 because of a music festival. Mona is saying most sailing events return entry fees. Well, I think that's true. Stingray said, I had the corona yesterday afternoon after a 30-hour trip to Seattle. Lasted only an evening. All good. Really? I mean, I thought he was joking. I thought like he had a beer. Stingray, is that true? You had corona?
He may have drunk it.
Or was it a Corona beer? I don't know if he's got a great sense of humor. Be serious here, Stingray, because I do have one friend in Spain. He and his wife are quite sure now that that's what, they didn't realize it at the time. They thought it was a bad flu that developed into pneumonia, but they tested for flu, and it tested negative for flu. So
it was before the corona test.
Yeah. And, of course, before the corona test. In Italy, unfortunately, sailing clubs also closed. Well, we told you, didn't we, on Friday, that there's advice, good advice. I mean, the club managers are all talking. There's the Club Corporation of America, and the commodores of the clubs are talking and sharing information, and they're doing reasonable and prudent things. They're shutting down the buffets and only serving a la carte so that people aren't handling or sneezing on the food out in the open. They've eliminated bar snacks. They're covering the peanuts, and you got to go in there with a spoon and yada yada. But at the end of the day, if what the Dr. Campbell said on that brief video, but the segment that I showed, is true, then that would explain why this seems to be rather easier to communicate to the contagion, because it was thought not to last very long on surfaces, especially in warm temperatures. Well, apparently that's not the case. For example, it was thought to be only 6 feet, a couple meters. Not a couple meters, 2/3 of a meter. No, 6 feet is 2 meters. And now it looks like it's quite a bit more than that. So, Wash, what's so funny? Are there funny comments here?
It's not
You're
funny.
giggling.
The former BOA and World Sailing Chief Executive Andy Hunt to lead new sport safety group.
No, you're kidding.
The new organization launched by Ron Dennis, the ex-chairman of McLaren Formula One team, which claims it will create a safer world of sport. Podium Analytics will work to develop innovative solutions to significantly reduce or prevent incidents and long-term impact of injury in sports.
So that's breaking news? Who's that from?
Well, this was published in Inside the Games and forwarded to us by Afosi.
Fozy. Okay, well, when you find it, let me know. So Ron Dennis, of course, whom I know from Formula One days, when I was running the sponsorship for the German company whose brand West was the sponsor of then West McLaren Mercedes, and Ron the team principal for that team, before he ran into trouble with the FIA over some dodgy tactics. Apparently, he started this new safety and sports group, Julia. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And the non-sailing CEO is to head that up?
That's correct.
Interesting. Well, the two of them may deserve each other. Oops, did I say that?
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Did you figure out who sent that to us?
No, I haven't got it.
Okay. Okay, let's carry on here. Andrew Morris from Melbourne. Hello to you, sir. Stingray, many of us will get corona, but few of us will have much of an issue with it, and then you're autoimmunized. Now, I'm told that's not true, Stingray. So Stingray thinks he had it. Did you get a test? Or you just think you had the symptoms when you got back? But regardless, I'm told by an infectious disease doctor friend of mine from New York, because I said, well, why can't I just go out and be a bug chaser, as they say in some underworld groups? Why can't I go out and just get exposed to it, and an assumption I don't have cardiopulmonary problems, and I'll survive it and just have a fever and maybe a dry cough for a few days. He said, forget it. It's way too risky, especially at your advanced, I'm 60, late 60s, especially at your advanced age. Forget it. Don't do that. But he said, moreover, you may still shed the virus after you are cured, after you're no longer showing symptoms of the coronavirus, COVID-19. So, Stingray, I'm not sure that's a good strategy, according to my infectious disease doctor friend in New York. Okay, Ezekiel, Sherry, there's Prenzel, Visser, Tom Herberts, Evans, we're going to get you on. Tom, I assume San Francisco's still on, but this is one of the hot spots here in the U.S., so. And as Jay Hanfield is echoing what our friend Tom Webster said, it's the airline flights and canceled airline flights, and that's going to really screw things up. Richard Gladwell, who I think he's written a couple really good articles, and I will put them up on my Facebook page. I think I already put one of his up earlier. Margarita Marshall, I'd like to know why RC, I think he meant RG, wrote that insensitive, Richard Gladwell, insensitive and insulting article about Italy, the CV, and the Cagliari event. Okay.
It was Jean-Pierre Keekins who sent
Who sent the article about the non-sailing CEO? I'm going to, you know what? I think that gives me a perfect chance to get him on the show and say, okay, let's put the past behind us, as Pumbaa said. And what was that animal? What was the name of that show? Lion King. Pumbaa said, let's put the past behind us, and let's do that and see if I can get the non-sailing CEO. I'll stop calling him that, I promise, and get him on the show and tell us what he's up to now. Why wouldn't he?
He's afraid of you.
Oh, he's not afraid of me. I'm harmless.
Well, you are harmless, but he doesn't know that.
I'm a pussycat. Come on. Jean-Pierre Kikens, the European branch of the laser class Eureka, has postponed the Masters Championship in Monaco to October. Yes, and we know the J24 Europeans, which was actually quite a bit later, has also been postponed. Stingray, who does have a sense, ditch the Olympic offshore double whatever thing and double-handed whatever, and race a new sailing Petri dish class. Oh, come on. By Baldridge. Hey, By is one of the coolest guys, great sailor in the modern history. Nice to see you on. Cliff Black, event cancellation notice issued this morning for the Trofeo Marco Rosati Optimus team race in May 2020. So you see, this is now starting not just to happen for events in, April in Italy. This is happening all across Europe. I talked to a good friend who's he's in the sailing marketing business, but he's also in the marketing and organization and television production business for other events, skiing events, track and field events, yada. And he said virtually all of his events for the rest of the first half of this year have been canceled. And, he's not having any revenue. He's going to have to lay off staff members. So it is tough, as Julia said, for small businesses. And Stingray being asked by several of you saying, did you get tested? Do you really have it? Mario Sampaio in Portugal saying, wouldn't common sense have already postponed these events? This is a geometric progression, so now is the time to be contained. I think most people would agree with you, Mario. I understand why event organizers are dragging their feet, and they're waiting for, again, as I said earlier, they're waiting for the big governmental decree. And if Italy extends it past the 3rd of April, then that is the no sporting events and the total lockdown, then I think it becomes quite easy for the country, for the event organizers in that country to simply call things up. Paul Homchick raising the very good point, too. If you went to the Sardinia World Series, do you think you'd get back into your country? And I've seen articles left, right, and center on that topic saying, no, you may get. First of all, if you can't go to Israel now, for example, and you can't leave Israel without a 2-week quarantine if you're coming from outside the country, full stop. That got put on, yesterday or this morning. Right, Julia?
Yes.
And, if you go to Italy and now you're coming back here and they say, where have you been? They might slap you in quarantine. I don't know how the U.S. government is going to handle U.S. citizens, but they may take your temperature and then they may say voluntary, quarantine yourself until... For 2 weeks, and it may be longer. It may have a longer period than just 14 days, some people are saying. So, what do we say here? Julia?
Stingray said, yes, Tom did not get tested, was making a bit of fun about getting it. As you said, the bigger issue is with carrying it, if you might infect anyone else with a weaker...
Exactly.
And Karen Olson Campia says, does U.S. Sailing have any official recommendation regarding whether or not yacht clubs should host international regattas within the next few months?
Is that a question about U.S. Sailing?
Yes.
U.S. Sailing has issued some kind of watered down. It's nothing that you wouldn't have seen any other, many other places. But, the clubs have got to take, you can't rely on Washington, D.C. or Brussels or World Sailing. The local organizers have got to look at the situation. They know their financial situations. They know what risks they're running, and they've got to take local decisions. And, I'm sure they will. I think we got a bunch of smart people in this sport.
Sanders and Biden have canceled their rallies for tonight.
Oh, they have?
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, that's going to put pressure on Mr. Trump to cancel his big rallies. He had some guy that's tested positive, right? He was flying around on Air Force One.
Mario Sampio says, who trusts government?
Yeah, exactly. And let's trust ourselves, sailors and clubs and classes, to do the right thing, and I'm sure they will. Jay Hanfield, I put a video on your page. I assume that means my Facebook page, Jay. This isn't an old person disease. It has killed old people in China. But here in the U.S., the biggest factor will be obesity. Oh, is that right? I heard blood pressure was an issue. A large number of young obese patients will die because they have so many other issues related to obesity. I guess in China, Julia, it was old men who were smokers, and apparently in China the women don't smoke
as much. Only
as much.
a tenth as much.
A tenth as much as the men?
Yeah.
Well, only 10% of the women smoke.
Yeah.
And all the men smoke. Or do the
Now 50%, they said.
or do the women smoke only 10% as much as the men? In any event, apparently it's much less. Boz Hamza, hello to you, sir. John Gomes is watching in Germany. John, I hope you're safe. Because apparently Germany has also got a situation there that is I don't know what the right word is. Blossoming is the wrong word, but expanding. Clark Chapin saying, got to have Corona with a lime. The lime apparently he thinks helping. Well,
scurvy.
Exactly. So that is good reason not to hang out with you sailing now, especially the ones with a sniffle or two, since no test are available. Yes, Joan Winston. And Joan is in the Washington, D.C. area and a very smart person who maybe can fill us in on some other stuff. Steve Gruber saying stars and well, now there's a point. Steve Gruber saying star if ACWS, the two ACWS regattas don't happen, then Stars and Stripes Team USA is still alive because they haven't missed a World Series regatta. Okay. Well, they would. The only way they could be alive is if the America's Cup regatta itself got postponed from 2021, which is not outside of the realm of possibility, as you can all imagine. Now, the problem with postponing something like the Cup is that the teams have a monthly burn rate of millions of dollars, overhead and salaries and so on. And to keep everybody on for another year when they weren't expecting it, man, oh man,
yeah,
that is
really
hard.
Yeah,
I've talked to a couple of senior series people in two of the three challengers, and the defender, and it's. Jay Hanfield also saying we need to. And Jay Hanfield, by the way, is a medical professional. He works in some kind of a. I'm not sure exactly what, but we need to stop saying warm weather will kill the virus. COVID-19 is in the same family as MERS, MERS, which is a coronavirus. And from the coronavirus from the Arabian Peninsula, and the average temp is usually above 100 Fahrenheit, and it doesn't kill the virus. So, indeed, and Stingray saying SeaTac, Seattle-Tacoma Airport up in the Northwest, PNW, was empty yesterday. Amazing. And on and on. Okay, what was that? DIA Denver? Could have been Denver. That airport show photo we showed. That now that you mention it, I think it was English language. Have Alex Kent have past pandemics canceled major events like this? While I'm empathetic to the world and to those who have or may catch COVID-19, it appears to be less contagious and less deadly than most. I'm not sure that's true now either, from what I'm hearing and reading this morning. So we don't know. We just obviously we don't know, Alex, and I think discretion is going to continue to be the better part of valor. But yes, I've read accounts. In fact, the Atlantic magazine online this morning, I read quite an interesting account where, Julie, did you see that? I'll get you the link, where they say that back in the 1918 Spanish flu, so-called Spanish flu, although apparently didn't originate in Spain.
Yeah.
But they were the first ones because they were neutral. They were neutral during the World War.
They were the only ones reporting any news.
And they were the only ones reporting real facts and figures because they weren't worried about, trying to keep the enemy at bay. And it got then dubbed the Spanish flu. But there were cities here in the U.S. that notably did not close down, Philadelphia being one of them, and they let festivals and gatherings and church and everything continue. And the death rate the mortality rate was much higher than in cities like, I think, St. Louis. There was some guy who, very unpopularly, who was the health guy or the mayor, whatever he was, closed the damn place down, said no public assemblies and nothing, and their death rate, he just was pilloried, apparently. But he turned out to have been smart and right. So, okay. Enough of all this. Henry Rees saying, who's in Germany, I think, interesting blog by this British MD. Yeah, a lot of people have commented on that, Henry. Thank you for that. Jay Hanfield, I don't know who he's replying to. Is this a health show? No, Dominic Heights, it's not normally, but it's health as we're trying to keep it with respect to sailing, because and I'm getting tons of, people wanted me to run doctors and a whole bunch. Don't want to do that. But Fred Hagedorn is watching in Chicago, presumably in Chicago. and I don't want to get into dietary. There's all sorts of advice, and there's fake news, and I'll let you all worry about that. But let's, Margarita Marshall, Tom, you should read that article, but it disappeared from the web just a few hours after it was put.
And I don't know what article that was.
I don't know yet. Margarita, tell us again what article. Oh, Jane Fetter, nice to see you. A long time. I'm going to talk about your daughter in a second, actually. Okay, you guys are arguing back and forth, discussing. And, of course, Fred Hagedorn's making the point, Julie, and you know this as well, that already Stanford is closed, University of Washington, UC Berkeley over in the East Bay, and now Harvard, among many, many other universities and schools, are sending their students home and learning and doing.
Finishing the semester online.
Doing online lectures and testing even. And, of course, Julia, as the Commodore of the Beach Street Yacht Club, you have directed the chairman of the Beach Street Yacht Club.
That's correct.
To send out a notice, which I have not done, but I will. I'm sorry. You can dock my pay.
Indeed.
But Julia has said that we should call off the Beach Street Yacht Club AGM, which happens on April Fool's Day, April 1st, because it was started as the Beach Street Yacht Club. It's a bit of a joke, as many of you know. Steve Gruber said Ivy League has just canceled their basketball championship. Bill Wingrove said, just check, stock market closed up 1,100 points. Yes. Between the time I did that interview with Tommy Webster, when the market had opened high and then gone back down to 100, 200, hovered down there most of the day, and then it went up at the end. There was a big buy at the end, which is nice. Marcus Schwentner, hello to you, sir. Hope you're safe and healthy. And who else here? There's a new name, Balint Smarme. Yeah, Marcus Schwentner said he missed the time change. Yeah, I've said that in the last couple of shows, Marcus, but until you all go on daylight time, the CET is only 8 hours difference. You're only 8 hours ahead of us.
Still find it online. But
you can watch the full replay online, both on our Facebook page as well as, of course, on YouTube. Lloyd Gilmore, Luca Rosati. Hello, Luca. What else? Marina Sikuju in Athens, presumably. Bobby Steele. Okay, I got to see if there's any other. Here's one political comment. I'll read this just because people think I tend to be a trumpeter, which I'm not. I like some of his fiscal policies. Fortunately for the USA, we have an antivirus genius for president. This will all work out. Stingray up in Seattle. Those people in Seattle, Julia, are all lefties, aren't they?
Yes.
They got a big problem up there with the virus, and hopefully they're getting that under control. Steve Gruber saying that code flag Q still kind of means under quarantine until inspected. That's what I thought, Steve, too. But according to Wikipedia, it does mean you can't disembark. That's right. It means you think you're safe. You're inviting the officials to come inspect you and be sure you're healthy so that people can disembark. Hamish Ross, oh my goodness, Hamish, thank you for your historical stuff, and congratulations, Hamish, on your win in the Classic Yacht Regatta down there in Auckland. We're going to feature that in a second. We are going to talk about some good sailing news. Stingray saying he thinks 80% of those who catch CV, coronavirus, feel little to no symptoms. Yep, that's what I've been reading. We may all already had it. Mm-hmm. Sangmeister saying the Long Beach is open for business. The Grand Prix and Con Cup are a go. And he, of course, is not a big fan of the Grand Prix. He thinks it ruins downtown. And he says, Mai Tais at Gladstone's. I don't know if he's offering them free.
I know.
John Tellis is the latest that the Newport Ensenada race, which is early April, is that still on as well? Let us know. So I'm sure it is. What else? Oh, my goodness. Lots of comments, okay. Any other, Julia? I'm scrolling through here like crazy.
Yeah.
Rick Dodson, hello to you, sir. Yeah, here's Hamish Ross, who, of course, Dr. Hamish Ross, who's a lawyer down in Auckland and has been on the show and had two of the highest viewed shows, I should say, here. Hamish, longtime friend and America's Cup expert, indeed a gift expert. Tom, isn't the big test, can you be insured for the travel or not? If not, any event has to be canceled. And that's been my point all along. If you're want to go to Italy to a race right now, or to South Korea, or tell me where, to up, the PNW or even San Francisco Bay, because we have a breakout here that seems to be growing exponentially. And if your insurance company says, well, if you go, sorry, you're not going to be health insurance when you come home or while you're there, well, I think Hamish is absolutely right. Stingray said his bartender assured him that he was perfectly good because the pub's cleanliness policy includes fresh coasters with every drink. John Sangmeister says 95 entries for Newport Ensenada. Of course, John's the chairman of the entry, boosting that. Very nicely done. Thanks, Joe Cool. Dan Nolan, hello, Dan. If WS cancels events, Ben Nichols is saying, will they refund the entry? I'm sure they've got to. They have to, which, of course, is going to be expensive for them because they've already incurred, got so-called sunk costs into those events. And now if they have to return entry fees and return sponsorship fees and so on. Are you looking at Stingray's crouton comment?
No, I'm looking at if World Sailing cancel events, where they refund the entry fees. And Clark Chapin says, World Sailing refund entry fees. Let me illustrate the probability of that.
No, to be fair, come on, Clark. I think they will. I thought you were laughing about Stingrays. Can croutons carry the virus? Well, apparently, probably not these kind. They carry carbs, which are even worse. Carbs. You don't want to eat carbs. But croutonic people obviously can carry the virus, and those who are out and about and then go around infecting other people are more than croutonic. Hamish Nichols asking, how does COVID do in salty air? Should we all slip anchor not on a cruise? Well, that's a good question. Brad Reed, who's watching, and I'll break the news now. Brad is going to be on the show this coming Friday to talk about the cool announcement that was made today that Newport and Sail Newport will be hosting another ocean race stopover, as they did for the last several editions of the Volvo, and the ocean race will be there in the spring of 2022. And Brad Reed's coming on the show for just a brief appearance, 15, 20 minutes on Friday, to tell us about that and about what else is going on with the ever cool and present Sail Newport, of which he is the esteemed executive director. And Brad is saying, is that a coincidence that the stock market goes up on the day we announce the stopover for the ocean race in Newport? Okay, clever. Tom Martin saying, Webster mentioned the PPT, plunge protection team. That likely explains the 1,000-point rise into the close, forcing a short squeeze. Yeah, probably, for those of you who are stock gurus. And Tom just thinks the PPT doesn't have much more juice. Henry Reese is in France currently. All meetings and conferences in Berlin where I'm supposed to attend have been canceled. Gives me time to watch TFE. Is it mostly women who carry the C virus? I hadn't heard that. Julie, have you heard that?
No, I haven't heard that.
I haven't heard that at all. But Joan Winston making the point, but replying to Stingray, no, but most caregivers are women. Best watch your humor. Okay, well, that all makes sense. Good evening, Gerardo Seeliger, the aforementioned, is in Madrid. Brad Dellenbaugh. Hi, Del. Brad Del. Nice to see you on here and talk about esteemed rules guys and writers, race managers. Joan Winston, my caregiver is female, and she loved my humor about that. Okay. I wonder if he's talking about his wife or girlfriend. Fred Hagedorn's living, I didn't know he sold Chicago. He's living in Concord, New Hampshire. Live free or die, which is the state's motto. Is the ocean race happening? Mikhail Lunt is saying, yes, I think it is. And I know that the CEO and the marketing man were through. They were looking both in New York and in Newport and in Boston, and settled again, apparently, obviously on Newport, which is the right choice. There can be no question. Brad and co have done a fantastic job hosting the stopovers there over the last, 2 or 3 times. Sherry Smith, I know you're joking, but as new cases of the coronavirus increase worldwide, research published last week by the China's Center for Disease Control and Prevention suggests that men are more likely to die of the virus than women, despite men and women being infected at similar rates. And that's in the New York Times, she says. Okay, well, there's Justin Farr. Long time, Justin. Jean-Jacques Branchard, my dish liquor would be cost so much I get a kit. My dish liquor. Okay, you guys. Let's carry on with the show. Julia, anything else? Harry Atterbury is watching. He's down from your neck of the woods, Julia. He's down in the beautiful Santa Barbara.
I don't know
him. You don't, but he's a cool guy, as most of our people are. Our sport is full of cool people, and this show is about cool people.
Including Joe Cool.
Joe Cool, who's watching. Right, Julia? This brings us to our segment, This Day in History. And do you know what happened on this day in history? In 1994.
March 10th. 94.
There's a hint.
Aha. Oh, that was...
The America's Cup was not until 90... The LVC, the Citizens Cup, as was the Defender trials were called. You can see the Citizen branding on the side of this boat, so that tells you it's a Defender.
Yep.
And the Defend trials were in 95, and this was in 94, early 94. Anybody know?
That's the all-female crew.
Well done. Keep going. Okay, we'll carry on here. On the 10th of March, the all-women's America's Cup team was announced. And a big article. It got a lot of publicity all over the place. This was a headline, believe it or not, from the Christian Science Monitor, who made a big deal, as did many other media outlets. The first all-female crew sails into challenge for the 1995 America's Cup. Of course, that was Bill Koch's team that had won the Cup in 92. He wanted to do something different in 95, so he gathered up some Olympic champs and some great sailors from all walks of life, and not just American sailors, but from, Leslie Egnott for one. And we saw on here a minute ago, we saw the mother of one of the team members there, Jane Fetter, whose daughter, J.J. Fetter, was a member of that team. And, of course, Don Riley, who's been on the show any number of times, and many others. This day in history. Jody Shields says, this day in history, someone sneezed and the world didn't panic. Please bring back those times. Steve Gruber saying, was it the first IACC Worlds? No, Steve, that was in 91. We had the cup in the ice. The first cup in the IACC boats was in 92. We had a world championship, as had been the tradition, in 91. And the first time those boats got raced in Anger, a cool regatta off Point Loma in San Diego in 1991, May of 1991 from memory. I was running the cup then. Steve Gruber is saying, well, it ended up with Dave Dellenbaugh on board. Yes, Brad Dellenbaugh, who's on here, his brother, Dave, better known as the Bearded Lady. Brad Dellenbaugh was put on at the end to be tactician, in fact, changed out for J.J. Fetter. And some people argue that so hurt the team morale. You're shaking your head, yes.
I think so.
It so hurt the team's morale that they would have been better off had they not put Brad on, or Dave Dellenbaugh, Brad's brother. And, of course, Dave Dell, who had been tactician with Bill Koch when they won in 92, so, he's a very highly respected guy and a smart guy and so on and so forth. Hamish Ross saying, yes, the Bearded Lady. Oh, right, I remember everyone exploding. Well, that happened toward the end of the defense trials in 1995, so a year later. The almost all women's team, Bill Wingrove is saying. Okay, but nonetheless, it was announced. It was a cool thing for the sport. They almost won the defense trials. I mean, it was close. I was with Dennis and Paul Caird in that team, and we magically snatched it away in that last race, but that's a whole other issue. Okay, what else is going on in the sport? Just some Bravo Zulus, and then we'll wrap this up. Come on, it's nice music. It's kind of Olympic.
Triumphant.
It's nice. Bravo Zulu, well-deserved to these three who are being inducted into the America's Cup Hall of Fame. It was announced today by the America's Cup Hall of Fame, Harrisoff Marine Museum. Franklin Osgood, who's long gone, but he was the winner of the first two America's Cups on his yacht Magic. And his second boat was Columbia Franklin Osgood was the first defender and the two-time winner of the America's Cup. This year marks the 150th anniversary, that is this year 2020, of Osgood's victory, because it was 1870, as Hamish Ross will tell you, when the first defense was held, AC1. We call the 1851 event AC0 because it wasn't really an America's Cup. It was a race around the Isle of Wight, and there was no deed of gift, and yada, yada. In any event, back to Mr. Franklin Osgood. His victory in 1870 is the owner and manager of the schooner Magic, which won the first defense of the America's Cup on August 8th, 1870, and the only fleet race for a Cup final. Magic led at all marks on the race course. Now remember, that first Cup, since the British defended the 1851 race with their fleet, there were 15 or 16 boats that were entered. Nobody's quite sure. 13 ended up racing around the Isle of Wight with the Yacht America. And the Americans came back and said, okay, we'll defend in 1870, and it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander, so we'll put our fleet out there. And it was Magic that was the leader of the pack and led all the way around in that race. It was a single race to defeat 16 other defenders and the lone challenger. In the following year, 1871, Osgood successfully defended again, this time with a new schooner, Columbia, in match races against the Challenger. Now, that one in 1871, which Hamish Ross will also tell you, it's that New York said, yeah, it'll be matches, but no one said that it has to be the same yacht. So New York entered different yachts in those match races depending upon the wind conditions.
Oh. I didn't know that.
Yes, yeah, it was quite a... And then finally they rewrote the deed of gift and made it any single yacht. During an era when most yacht owners, again back to Mr. Osgood, yacht owners knew little about sailing, let alone racing, Osgood was a bona fide racing yachtsman. The New York Herald observed that, quote, Mr. Franklin Osgood, the owner of the Magic, is a brave, courageous, and bold seaman. He goes for every stitch of canvas aloft in a stiff breeze and would himself get in the weather rigging if it would accelerate the Magic's speed. So he is one of 3 inductees, well-deserved, I think, and Hamish is on that committee along with a number of other luminaries, including Richard Gladwell is on the committee that selects the America's Cup Hall of Fame. The second one is this gentleman. You know who that is, Julia? I think you've met him. That is Brian Willis from Great Britain, who chaired a number of juries, who helped, along with Joran Peterson and myself and a couple others, develop umpiring. He was a keen and early a proponent of umpiring, and he has also been on arbitration panels for the America's Cup. Brian was the guy who probably caused umpiring to happen, not because he dreamt it up per se, although a lot of clubs were thinking about it when I got convinced Long Beach Yacht Club to put it in for the 1988 Congressional Cup. But Brian had been the rules advisor and tactics advisor for Ian Murray and Peter Gilmore in the 87 Cup, in the 87 defense trials, which were so contentious. Because Brian said, we can use the rules and we can do this and do that and sucker the other teams. And they had protests because of that almost every night, and in some cases all night in the defense trials. It was unbelievable how contentious the defender trials were. Many people think that because of the aggressive sailing in the defense trials, they wore each other out. And by the time they got to Dennis just, sailed off into the, not quite, but off into the horizon.
I think there's a skit in the offing because Peter Gilmore is the Vice Commodore of the St. Francis Yacht Club.
No, I'm talking about Aussie Peter Gilmore.
I know.
Oh, I see. You're thinking Peter Gilmore, who is the Rear Commodore of St. Francis. We could do a skit with him playing Aussie Peter Gilmore.
Yeah, he's Vice Commodore now.
No.
Bill Dana.
Bill Dana's Vice Commodore.
Oh. That's right.
Right?
Excuse me.
Yeah, okay. Anyway,
right.
He's Rear Commodore. You're right. That's a good idea. We'll get...
We have a variety of Peter Gilmores.
Indeed. But back to Brian Willis. He's being inducted into the Hall of Fame for his dedicated service as chairman and as a member of the America's Cup International Juries and Arbitration Panels. He's also served as a rules advisor, yada, yada. Always patient and thoughtful, and that is true, to a fault, in fact. Willis guided many America's Cup juries and panels through difficult and demanding decisions. The work of a cup jury, okay, it goes on and on here, but he is a cool guy, well-deserved of this honor. I'm not sure there's any other rules guys jury types who've been put in. I wonder if Hamish or Richard Gladwell, who were watching, would comment on that. The third one is my former neighbor in Hamburg, Germany, a cool guy. He is Rolf Froelich. He won 2 America's Cup matches with Team Alinghi as the chief designer of both their 64 winner, the ICC boat, SUI 64 in 03, and then SUI 100, which defended successfully in Valencia in 07. Froelich's first significant foray into the America's Cup was during 2000 when he designed Bravo España. A lot of people forget that. But a terrific designer, and not Udall Froelich, that design firm in Hamburg. He was my neighbor. We used to go have a beer. Even when we were at the peak of the big battle, Hamish Ross and I was their rules advisor. He and I would get together somewhere in the world and still be able to have a glass of wine and a civil dinner. Likewise with Herr Froelich, who is an esteemed yacht designer and designed those 2 winners for Alinghi, and very well deserving. Wouldn't you agree?
Indeed.
I think he's Dutch, but living in Germany. I can't remember. Bravo Zulu also, you know who that is.
I do.
To our dear friend Jim DeWitt, who's here in the Bay Area. He is a Renaissance man. He is a yachtsman, a sail maker, and later in life, a painter. In fact, I guess he was a painter most of his life, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And the paintings here in the studio are both his. And you'll see them in yacht clubs all over, well, the U.S. and the world. And he did this painting of the trimaran for the Golden Gate Yacht Club, which was kindly then given to me. And the painting behind me, which is obviously of the Golden Gate Bridge and I think some J105s or something. I'm not sure what that is back there, the particular type of boats. But Jim has just turned 90.
It's for sale.
What did I do with that block? There we go. It is for sale. If anybody wants it, I'm not going to sell the trimaran. Won't sell that one. But this one belongs to Jim. They've loaned it to us. He and his daughter have loaned it to us. Everybody wants his picture, or we may have him on here sometime and offer up some others. So
he also has a website if you want to look.
At jimdewitt.com, is it?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think so.
You can Google it for sure. A cool guy, Renaissance man, still going strong at age 90. Bravo Zulu, Jimmy DeWitt. Finally, well, I got 2 more. We got congrats to our also aforementioned, what boat that is, Julia? That is Rainbow. It's the boat that Hamish Ross and Brad Butterworth and co campaign in Auckland. Look at the beautiful breeze. What a great, I'll take that lower third out of there. What a great photo. And they've just won another major classic yacht regatta in AKL in Auckland. So congrats to them. Bravo Zulu. You love to see this stuff.
It's gorgeous.
And again, that's Hamish and Brad and others that campaign that boat. So, great sailors all. And that reminds me that classic yacht racing is on the upswing. And Julie, the St. Francis Yacht Club is going to really up the ante for the Big Boat Series this year in September with a big expansion, they think, of the classic yacht division, a la what goes on in Europe in the fall. Also to Sail Newport, Bravo Zulu, and to Brad Reed, who is the executive director of Sail Newport, and to Newport, Rhode Island, and to the governor and the whole state. They have secured, as we said earlier in the show, they have secured the ocean race. And I said the ocean race returns to the ocean state because that's what Rhode Island is called. That's their moniker. It's the ocean state. Like this is the golden, what is this called? The Golden State.
Yeah.
And Brad, congrats to you. He will be on the show. He'll join us on the show live via Skype from Newport, the Sail Newport offices, where he's been executive director for, 15 or more years of a terrific community sailing organization that started in 1983 when we lost the cup in Newport. And a few of us got together and said, what are we going to do now? And out of that discussion came Sail Newport that has flourished under Brad's leadership. He'll be with us as the first time ever as a guest, I think, on the show on Friday, same time, same channel, 1300 Pacific. And that's different times for those of you in the world that are on different, not yet on summertime in Europe. And for those of you down under who are about to go off in another month's time, your summertime. We're all screwed up in March and October when this happens. Who else? What else is saying here? Nice photo of Rainbow. Yeah, it is a terrific photo. And I want to ride on that boat when we get down to Auckland for the Cup, Hamish, if you're still watching. Please, may I please? Clark Chapin, I went back and got updated view counts from the shows going back to mid-November, and it pushed the total over 600. Well, I'm sure today's will too, Hamish. Thank you. Or Clark, thank you. Antonio Cardona Espen is in Mallorca. Hello, Antonio. Welcome. Bienvenidos a todos, and especially to you. Washington State is the Everona State.
Evergreen.
The Everona State?
No.
Is it the Evergreens?
As a Corona.
Oh, Corona. Stingray's on a roll today, isn't he, Julia? Huh? Any other comments? Okay, we'll wrap this up. Thanks all for joining us. Again, if you want to look at our past shows or the website, if you just Google now TFE Live, it's pops up, all the Google searches pop right up with our Facebook page and our YouTube page, where we are now posting shows. It takes about an hour or two after the show, but I'll put a YouTube recording of this show up on YouTube, as well as, of course, as immediately we go off the air here in a minute or so, you can watch a replay on our Sailing Illustrated Facebook page. Julia?
And always, I remind you to go back and look at the comments, because there's some good ideas and good people.
And a lot of comments today.
Yep.
Like, share, and subscribe. If you will, please become a patron over on sailingillustrated.com. If you're so inclined, we appreciate that very much. Or you can do it on PayPal, paypal.me/sailingillustrated. You make a direct and several of you have done that now. Thank you very much indeed. Some people prefer to make a one-time single rather than the Patreon setup. Okay, thanks for the credits for today's show. And we hope to see you again on Friday, same time, same channel, and we'll be back at it, TFE Live. Julia, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
My co-host and coordinating producer, and we'll keep her healthy, and you keep me healthy.
Trying.
Try not to get the coronavirus, all of you. I'm your host, Tom Ehman. See you on Friday, same time, same channel. In the meantime, sail fast, sail safe, have fun. Ciao. Bye.